Hello, Eileen.
Hello, Counselor Rieger.
Oh, okay, you can hear me. Good. All right.
Yep.
Get a glass,
Sounds good.
get a glass of water. I'll be back.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hello, David.
Hello.
Happy New Year
I guess Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
as well. Yes.
A couple of holidays since I last.
Well, it's the 10th day of Christmas, so you can still say that.
It's which day of Christmas? The what?
10th.
10th. Oh, yeah. There used to be a festival in Minnesota where you would carry out the Christmas tree. And it was always in January. And I don't remember what the meaning of it was. You'd have a period of time. And what is it? What's Saint what day? Anyway.
Probably St. Stephen is the 12th day of Christmas. So, or Epiphany.
Is that the day you carry
Yes.
out the Christmas
I don't
tree?
know, carrying out the Christmas tree festival, but that could be, you did it on the 12th day. That would make sense.
Let me think of what that
Good
was
evening,
called.
Francis.
Maybe, yes. Did you then set the tree on fire?
Nope. Well, I don't know actually how that actually worked. Back in the days of candles, that probably happened already. They used to put candles on Christmas Eve, so that was always a trick just to keep the tree alive. Yeah, I gotta forget what that was. But it was just another little festival after Christmas about taking all the stuff out. Gotta look it up now. I can't remember.
Good evening, Kelly. And partner.
I'm just admitting Riz is coming in as just moved to panelist. And so I think we're only waiting for Renee. I haven't heard anything from her about whether she might make it or not. So good evening, everyone. Up here's Renee. She's coming in right now.
All right, so we not only have quorum, we have full board. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to call us to order at 5:31. And then do we have any members of the public? We do have one.
I don't see,
No.
yeah, just
Okay.
AV support right now. I have nobody from the public online.
All right, so we'll move into board business. So the library minutes from our December 6th meeting were sent out. And so I will entertain either a motion to accept as is or changes or corrections.
Motion to accept as is.
All right, so we have a motion from Francis to accept. Any seconds? You can just raise your hand. All right, Kelly seconds. All those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed, same sign. All right, that passes unanimously. And then we're going to the Community Services Integrated Master Plan input and discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Yeah, we are taking a pretty aggressive step to develop an integrated master plan for the Community Services Division. We have so many varied opportunities that we want to look at, abilities to better align and better provide services to our communities. And we're just kind of starting off this with some focus groups. We've had a couple back in November. We're going to have a few more the last day of January and that first week of February. You have two members on the board steering committee that have heard part of this. But I've got about 8 questions I'd like to ask you related to that, and then maybe a little conversation that you may have about the process and how it moves forward. I'll try to answer some of those questions. So I guess before I get started, do you have any big, hairy, audacious questions before we jump into the questions here? All right. So again, this is for the Community Services Department as a whole. I know you guys have a higher interest for things at the library, and that's okay. That's why we want to talk to all of these different groups. But I guess one of the first questions is, what do you think are some of the strengths of the Community Services Department today?
So just a question of information, who all falls under that?
Under Community Services?
Yes, what
Okay,
portions
so
of
we
the county
have,
services are there?
good question. So we have the library, we have the Parks, Recreation, Open Space Division, which includes the ice rink, the golf course, the walk-up aquatics facility, all of our parks, our athletic fields. The open space has all the trails and trailheads within the county. We have social services, which we do a lot of that by contracting, but we manage contracts for a lot of our partners. So the youth center, the teen center, the extension office, the little theater, the historical society. We manage contracts for all those folks in our public facing facilities. And then most of the special events we have a hand in. We really focus on the annual concert series. And then we partner with several other special events throughout the season. So we're pretty broad and diverse there. So is there something that you think we do well?
I would say, obviously, again, because of where we are, one of my concerns when I got appointed to be sent here was what is the library going to be like? Having come from Boston and to Albuquerque, having huge access was sort of nice. And I think the library for its size and the size of the community is fantastic. I think the other community services, so when I'm doing interviews with people from outside of Los Alamos, talking about, we're a small community, but the resources we have are much, much bigger than what you would expect in a town of this size, just about anywhere else. Again, from not just library, but thinking of, the concert series, the hiking trails, just the amount of things going on, I think far exceed what I would expect in a town of 12,000.
Yeah, plus from my perspective, I think the community services folks are doing a really good job of communicating the different events that are going on within the county. So, between the newspapers and Facebook and other media outlets, you guys do a really good job of putting the word out of what the services are available, and if anybody wants to participate, they can. And so it's I find it pretty useful. I get feeds from multiple places of different events that are going on within the county, and I really appreciate that.
Okay, great. Anything else that's a strength that we do well? This counselor.
Yeah, there's a document that I got, the booklet you put out for the activities in the winter. That was really nice.
Yeah, the 100 days.
Yeah, that was a great summary of activities in the fall and the winter. And I read the whole thing and managed to schedule a few of them out, but it was a very well produced document. I don't know, that's your department, right?
Yes, we do that. And we take good pride in that.
Yeah, it's a really well-written thing and very clear. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we'll, if you got something else that comes to your mind in a minute, either toss it in the chat or get it to Eileen and we'll get it to the list. What do you guys see as major challenges, opportunities for improvement, or glaring weaknesses that we have? You're not going to hurt our feelings if you say anything, I promise. This is to benefit you. Yes, Francis.
I think the coordination between all these very different community resources is probably both a weakness and a strength and a source of opportunities. Communication is key. Just being able to keep up with all the activities in this one division is a little mind-boggling.
It does have its challenges. Yes, it does.
And I think, speaking from a library point of view, continued financial support, continued importance of updating the infrastructure, especially the computing infrastructure of the whole county, possibly. That's going to be that could be a major impact on your division.
So building on what Francis said, I would say that, and as part of our work plan, is increasing communication and linkage between the different groups. It seems sometimes, again, this group is doing this and this group is doing that, and they don't necessarily match each other. As a newcomer to the community, or somewhat new now, I would say that that there are lots of things that happen that I don't know how to even get. Like, I didn't know, I have seen the 100-day thing, but I would have known that when I got here, that thing is out there. And there's a lot of sort of insider language, as well as just assumptions that everybody knows what this means, and what's going on. That there's, again, which is sort of strange for a community that has high turnover with lots of new people coming in all the time. But that was my experience, is that, people, oh, it's the light parade. And okay, what does that mean? Right? Or the whole weekends, right? And so I would get the portion, oh, there's a parade, but not know all the other stuff that was happening that weekend. So that would be, where there's an opportunity for growth, is moving beyond to really communicate to people who are new to the community about everything that's going on.
And I think care needs to be taken to avoid any repetition of the nuisance property brouhaha in that board or committee, whatever. Sending out surveys or focus groups might be viewed more negatively now than 2 months ago.
Okay. All right. Again, if you think of Anything else, get it to Eileen and she'll get it to me. Or if you think about it, raise your hand and we'll get it to the list. So what types of additional programs, activities, or services should we be thinking about?
Well, and since we're on the library board, I'm a big audiobook fan, and I really would like to see an expanded list of audiobooks that are offered through the library, because I know the library does subscribe to the Overdrive system, but I think I've never seen the behind the scenes machinations of what goes into the Overdrive system, but I think there's different tiers of books that you can purchase through the Overdrive system. So I would like to see if we can get on a higher tier. So I'm retired military. I have an account through the U.S. Army's Overdrive system, and that has tons more stuff. And it'd be nice if we could offer something similar at our local library. But it's just the selection of materials that are on Overdrive is just not as rich as what I thought. But I would hope to get at our local library.
Okay.
I guess, again, building on that, what we discussed last board meeting, what we've heard from others, what I hear is also increase in Overdrive, and I'm blanking on the other one at the moment, but for increasing funding for ebooks. That's the other.
Hoopla is the other one.
Hoopla, thank you, Francis. I use Overdrive more, and so that was not one I could come up with. Just as my own personal thing, it was sort of bounced about once, I think. I think we have a great opportunity for a book fair for science writing, science fiction writing. I don't know what it would be, something that we could easily target for us as a community. So that would be, again, from a library perspective, I think that could be something exciting. One more thing for Eileen to do is a short-staffed place. So.
There might also be an opportunity. I don't know if that's the question we're on now. John and Riz, I think, have mentioned that coming in, the lab does all sorts of stuff to welcome you and to get you on board. And if the Community Services Division had something like that, I think it could be very useful. A lot of word of mouth stuff happens now. And to have it focused in one update or something would be good.
Okay. Are there any new facilities or amenities we need to be considering during this process?
I think further investigation of the use of the space between the library building and the senior center needs to be explored.
Do you have any initial thoughts on that from just your perspective?
There was a concert there last summer. Time is kind of hard to grasp right now. Mm-hmm. And it worked, but it would have worked better with real chairs that didn't get lower as you continue to sit down. So for outside activities, some covering that might protect the attendees, I think it has a lot of potential there.
Okay.
And I'm not sure how this fits into the overall master planning the county is doing, if that's what we're discussing, but obviously the loss of the movie theater certainly impacted my family with 2 teenagers and a younger, and then Fox's, and I know there's lots of conversation about what do teens and youth do and those sorts of things, but I think those are just bigger community building things than just, hey, we're going to have this one off, or the teen center is going to do something on a Friday night. I think those, again, are sort of very heavily felt losses in the community, on top of everything else that's going on, and not being able to do things. So,
Sure. So we need general improvements. To our facilities or operations that come to mind that we haven't already talked about. Okay. Do you feel like there are any portions of Los Alamos County that are underserved by community services?
Kind of a second to what John said. I think that teens and young people aren't served as well as families with young children. I've also heard from a lot of single adults that it's hard to connect with other single adults in town. So that's a population that is possibly underserved.
Okay.
Do any of your departments collect usage stats based on age groups?
Our recreation programs and the library does, both of them do.
Okay. It would be interesting to see what age groups are missing.
yeah, and I would second Kelly's in just the population that I work with. In the church, we have a number of elderly who are homebound, some who don't or can't drive, who receive some services from the senior center. I don't know what all is available, but there's a loneliness factor, definitely say on young adults who are not married, not without kids, that can, especially new to town, but in the older population, and as well as accessibility, again, to community resources where we say, hey, there's all these things, Hoopla, Overdrive, library, but they don't even have the technology skills or resources to get into that, right? So that would be, so it's not just loneliness, it's accessibility to resources.
Okay. So what are some key issues and values that we need to consider as we're building up this plan for the community?
Could you say more what you mean by, say, values? You wanting to know what we say our community values are, or?
It's kind of building off where we just talked about the underserved, but one of the obvious ones is for the most part, we have a highly educated community. So sometimes we overlook those that are less educated. They might not have PhDs. They may have just a high school diploma and trying to survive in our community. And sometimes we forget that. We've had the recent inclusivity task force. Are we doing a good job of meeting everyone's needs? Are we friendly to the LGBTQ plus community? Are we creating barriers to that group that we're not aware of? Do we think that civility should be a big issue in our community because we have so many, not only, we just have a broad demographic of education, of homeland, of cultures. Should we be more sensitive and civil? Or again, some things like that are kind of things that come to mind that we we don't think we have any bias sometimes, but sometimes we accidentally do it and don't intend to. Okay, again, if you go ahead.
This is a hard one. I would say that balance is important. If you have 12 projects for parks and recs and one for social services and one for the library, it's out of balance. And just like if you do everything for teens, the older folks are forgotten. If you do everything for the ones who live outdoors, the ones that live indoors. So it's a balancing act.
I agree. And that's one of the big things I want to get out of this is we have all of our interest groups be a part of this and we prioritize where we want to go and everybody knows what the game plan is. And it's, if you're number 5 on the list, at least you're number 5 on the list and we've got a game plan to move forward. Right now, seems like a little bit of one-offs on occasion. Whoever screams the loudest or has the best idea and can get the most people can make something happen. Sometimes that's good, but sometimes everybody else gets left out. So that's a good thing we want to try to get from this. So thank you for that. All right, so that'll take me to my final question. And what do you guys see as priorities for community services as we're considering this plan? It can be a physical priority, it can be a programming priority, it can be a philosophical priority.
I guess this is sort of answering the last question too. is, again, as a relative newcomer to the community, I think there is, I don't necessarily think it's preference as much as it is just default for people who have been in the community for a long time, people who work at the labs. Again, I think there's, as communication goes, there's a sort of default, oh, they'll find out about this through work. And those of us who don't work for the labs or don't have family in the labs, that's just like this black hole that exists out in the community. Obviously, they drive what we do. I lived in a military town. I know what that looks like and how that operates. But I think that there are lots of voices that aren't heard, and they don't know how to be heard. I think some of the racial equity and inclusivity task force will try and give voice to that and other ways of doing that. But when we heard the presentation by the library staff on increasing access and inclusivity in the library, one of my first questions was, does somebody at the county level work on these things? And they said no, which was sort of surprising to me. So it's that sense of voice hearing that I don't necessarily think happens a lot. And again, some of that is just communication in the community. And some of it is interest on those who want to participate. If you don't want to, know, then you're not going to ever know, right? There is some community piece of that coming out. So sort of lost my train of thought, but that's sort of, I think there is, again, thinking of people who are not PhDs, who are, sort of our hidden poor, housing obviously is still a major issue. How does community services help that? I'm not sure, but I see, sort of what I've always said is, when I got appointed to come here, I wanted to learn more about Los Alamos, and it's a short history, which is sort of a blessing. And the major issues in the 40s were housing, secrecy, and alcoholism. And I would still say in 2022 now, 3 of the major issues in this community are housing, alcoholism, and secrecy. It still plays itself out through the DNA of the town. So, which then leads to all sorts of other problems that sort of go underreported, including domestic abuse, drug and alcohol use, and the things that fly from those. So.
Okay. So this is not going to be the only time you get to hear about this. There is, like I said, some stakeholder groups at the end of the month and in early February that if you're on another group or you want to participate again, please let me or Eileen know, and we'll make sure you get an invitation for that if there's something that you wanted to say. If there's something you wanted to say or information comes to you at 2:00 in the morning, send Eileen or myself an email, and we'll take that information and add it to it. We probably won't send you an email back at 2:00 in the morning, but we'll take care of it the next day. So the big group's going to be here. February, we'll have some more meetings. Probably in March, we're going to do a statistically valid survey and then an online collaborative survey. They're also coming to town and they're doing an inventory assessment of all of our items under CSD. And then we'll send everybody that's participated an invitation to some presentations we'll have in April about the virtual findings, what they've seen from the survey, what they've seen from on site, what they've gathered from all these interviews and focus groups. And then from there, begin to start making the recommendations and priorities. Again, this is a community services division. I really want to integrate everything we do because we have so many touch points with the community that it's silly that we can't be a resource at the library, not only for your reading or educational needs, but maybe you're having a challenging time in your life, and it'd be kind of cool if where you went there all the time, maybe you could find some help in whatever was challenging in your life, whether it was you got a child acting up, you got marital issues, you got a sucker punch from life, and you just need to know how to deal with it. We want to bring all these things out into the open. Secrecy is really interesting because a lot of people at the lab don't want people to know their problems because it thinks it impacts their Q clearance or potentially puts them at odds. And we want people to be open about it, or at least have it in front of them in lots of places that, hey, you got a problem that you're kind of weighing you down. Here's some resources for you to reach out to, or we can provide that maybe helps you over that hump and get you back to being a good member of our community and having a better quality of life. So any final questions from you guys on this integrated master plan process? Well, again, I thank you for taking your time. I know this January meeting's busy for a lot of folks. You're going to be working on updating your work plan. So I'll let you get to that fun stuff. But thank you again so much for allowing me a little bit of time here to get some information from you. And again, if something joggles your mind later, don't hesitate to send me the info and we'll get it in the big crux of information.
Thank you very much. Thank you for including us in your questioning.
Appreciate it. Have a good evening.
Thank you. All right, so then moving on to the fiscal year 23 library board work plan that was included in everything that Geneva sent out. I think the week of the 24th. I don't remember when that came out. How do you want to do that conversation, Eileen? Do you want to lead it? Do you want to go point by bullet? I mean, section heading? I'm not sure.
John, Chair Nash, if you would like to, I think you can, kind of do it however you would like. I don't know that there's any, right or wrong way to do that. Probably want to look at the things that have, particularly that have changed or that we're adding. And then we can also just discuss ideas in terms of, if people have questions about the content that's in there, anything else that you'd like to see in the plan for next year, ideas for that. And I think the idea would be that we would have a final plan for the February meeting that we would actually vote on. Okay. So tonight is really discussion of what's currently in there and anything that we might want to add.
So most of it was a continuation from what we did last year. I have to read in greater detail to remember exactly what I changed. There was a couple of things I made additions to based on what we've had conversations about, including technology, increasing access, again, listening sessions, which is sort of on a hold thing. Some of the things that they've done on the board in the past that we just haven't been able to get to. And then, sorry, I'm looking as I'm speaking. The one thing under attachment B, which is page 6, which is council goals and priorities. Last year's plan did not have X's in all the boxes, and I don't remember exactly. Again, I don't have those with me, but I know that one of them I did is increasing the amount and types of housing options, which I put an X that we can say we are working on that simply because I sit on the North Mesa Housing Task Force and have taken out several books from the library on recent ones on urban planning and what's happening in new urbanism and so forth. And so you can say at least the library's impacted me in serving in that role. So that one I did change, but I'm open to other questions, concerns, comments, if you read through the plan, especially for things that I might have missed that you think should be in there.
So Chair Nash, one other thing I just wanted to point out, because it was one thing we added, we do have a requirement by the New Mexico State Library that we submit a library strategic plan every 3 years. And so the way this particular cycle will fall for the next fiscal year, part of that planning will be happening during the time frame for this work plan.
Okay.
So that has been added in. I think it was under section 4.0. But I did want
that was the one I asked about. Is that correct?
Yes,
okay.
Thank you. So I just wanted to point that out as an addition as something that will be happening during this next work plan cycle.
And I guess I did have one other question for you, Eileen, and that is, I know the policies were overlooked 3 years ago, and so I don't know how soon we need to go through those again. That could be a potential other addition for.
Yeah, I would say probably not. I mean, in general, the last time, I mean, there had been quite a gap between the policy revisions. We actually had a 10-year gap between the last two. I don't think I would want to wait that long, but I'm thinking maybe 5 years is kind of an appropriate time frame, unless we know that there are things that are changing in our environment. Sometimes, if there are major legal changes around First Amendment rights or, other things like that, that could potentially change our policies or other societal changes that we're aware of. But I would say probably, given the amount of work and effort that goes into that, I feel like a 5-year renewal or, review of the policies would be reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
And I just would also like to clarify, part of that is also because the board will review, they make recommendations, and then that has to go to council for approval of those, which is another reason why we probably don't want to do it too frequently.
All right, so opening to the floor for questions or comments or addition, subtraction. And I guess just for your information, Francis, since you haven't gone through this before, since I didn't know how this worked last year, is we send this off to the council, and then we make a presentation to the council on it, on what we're working on. June is when we did it last year. I don't know what that will be, if that's typical time, and they ask us questions, give recommendations of where they would like us to see us doing other things. So.
This has, it's very general in terms of, creating or helping or supporting. So this doesn't get into specifics like more hoopla accounts or anything like that.
No, and that's because I think what you're referring to would really be more of what we think of as operational plan. And so some of those kind of items will be the things that occur in the library strategic plan. So when we do that plan that we're putting together for the state library, that we do every 3 years, those are the kind of specific things that we would be putting in with, target dates of when we're trying to achieve certain things, what we're focusing on, and really more of a kind of strategic operational plan that comes out of the library.
Okay.
And as I understand it, you again correct me, Councilor Rieger or Eileen, this is really, again, from the county council's perspective of how we are working, again, across the county, all groups are working towards what the county council's goals are.
Well,
So again, so a little more generic in that than this is what the library is focusing on specifically.
yeah, but those are all the public goals too. I think that's what we try to represent. I mean, it's a list of what the public appears to want. And those are interactions from the public to put together most of the list of goals. So
Yes, sorry if I was.
yeah.
Yes.
So we don't.
Yes.
And I want to say the other thing you said earlier is correct. You're on the fiscal year. So this is the final presentation isn't until about almost halfway through the year. Yeah, I don't know how June happened. That's a little bit late, but maybe a little bit earlier than that would be better. But yeah, we're on the fiscal year. So that's July 1st.
And I would say, I think it's appropriate to have some things in there if you want to have, and again, I would phrase it rather broadly. So rather than saying, we are specifically going to increase, say, our Hoopla funding by X number of dollars or something like that as, a goal in the plan, we can have something in there. And I think we do already, if I'm not mistaken, Chair Nash, about, working with the library to ensure that we have adequate resources. If the board really felt that, we really want to, like, as we have a technology goal in there right now, and technology kind of the way we think about it and talk about it right now in the presentation that we had for the board last month, definitely we're including our electronic resources, within that technology, but we could have something a little bit more specific. So if that's something the board really would like to look into a little bit more this year in terms of looking at electronic resources, ensuring that we have the resources available around our electronic resources, I think that would be really appropriate to add. I just wouldn't want to say how we're going to do that yet. I think that will come out of library strategic planning and, things that we look at in more detail as we go forward.
Yes, and I do believe I put something in there. I'm trying to find my document at the moment so that I can search it, simply because it had been part of our conversation already.
It may be in 2.1. Well, not really. Well, there's assist library with improving and increasing technology offerings and opportunities.
Yes.
So that's the bottom of two.
That's the last, yes, that's about last bullet point. Thank you. I just found that. Yeah, and so we could be more specific on that if you would like us to be. That was a bullet point that I did add.
And like I said, we could keep that, and we could even, because technology is kind of broad, I think it covers a lot of things from, everything from our public information, our public access computers, to things like electronic resources. But we could have a similar, type of bullet point around electronic resources, improving, working with library, assisting library, whatever, to improve access to electronic resources, something along those lines.
So the first bullet point on page 4, just before 3.0, also has, so I say, development of public, your potential priority areas for input and outreach, that is communicating with the community, accessibility, racial equity, and inclusivity of library services and programs, development of public technology to enhance user experience, which again, if you can't check out an electronic book, you're not having a good user experience, and addressing the digital divide. And that's new verbiage for some of that over last year.
Okay.
I like Eileen's suggestion to add another bullet to like assist library with procuring more access to electronic services.
So what I might suggest is saying identifying needs and providing access, because I think part of the thing that we also want to make sure is that we're aligning anything that we would add to actual needs from the public. I think one of the things is, we can go out there and spend money, but we don't know necessarily if we're spending it on the electronic resources that our patrons want and the community, wants and needs. So I think part of that also is not just, acquiring the additional resources, but identifying what those resources are, that are needed. So, do we put money into, say, more electronic magazines, or is it really overdrive titles that people want, more hoopla access? I think there's a lot of things in there that we would need to look at. So I definitely would like board support on identifying needs as well.
So I can add that in. I'll send that to you. I'll type something up and we can get a look at it in February to verify verbiage. All right, so Kelly, Renee, or Riz, do you have anything to add to this conversation?
I don't.
It looks really good, John. I haven't read every single word, but it looks really thorough, and I like. It seems really inclusive, and it seems really accurate. It's what we do and what we want to do. Really
Okay.
good.
In part of the document, you mention library staff promotions, and it made me think I'd like to actually hear more from library staff, if that's possible, to see since they are on the front lines, so to speak, what they think might help improve the library in the community. Other than that, it looks fantastic.
That's a great idea, Renee. I often feel like Eileen has to do so much in these meetings. We hear so much from her. It would be really cool to hear from some of the staff too.
One of the things that I've thought about doing, and we've done a little bit more of that this year with the presentations on accessibility and the technology presentation. And I know last year we had our youth services librarian do kind of an update after summer reading program. But there are a number of topics I think that would really be helpful if the board is interested. We could have, I could have one of our librarians come and actually do a presentation on ebooks and kind of that whole ebook environment. It's pretty complex. There are other, various issues within the library, whether it's collection development, things like that, that would be, I think, educational, but also really helpful in terms of being able to share information with board and then getting also, feedback from the board on some of the things that we're working on or have questions about. So, that's certainly something we could do. That's really, I don't know quite how that would fit into the work plan other than, working with library staff on, presentations on library topics or, something along those lines. But we certainly could do that. And I think it would be really wonderful, both for the staff as well as for the board.
Yeah,
I agree. I think that's great.
Yeah, we could work something up, clearly something to help us to help be advocates on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Although I wonder to flip that so they're not necessarily coming to us is if we have board representation at your staff meetings. I don't know if you would consider that to be appropriate or not. But whenever you're meeting, we have one or two people there, just say, hey, we're members of the board. We'd love you to tell us what's going on. So,
I think where it would be really helpful is not necessarily like our ongoing, sort of operational staff meetings, because a lot of that is pretty granular information that probably wouldn't be particularly helpful. A lot of it is logistics, those kinds of things. But where I see that really helpful is in the strategic planning process, because that's really where a lot of that's going to come up, where we're going to hear from staff what the needs are, their perceptions of that. And I just think as we work towards that goal in the next work plan for the strategic plan, that we definitely need to make sure that in the process there is like a special meeting or meetings with staff to really gather that input. And I think the other one that might be appropriate as well is, and I haven't thought of this before, but we don't do a lot, but we do a couple of all staff meetings each year, and they're usually on bigger topics. Sometimes it is around things like strategic planning or major new initiative that we might be rolling out, those kind of things. But it might be a great idea to think about inviting board to an all staff meeting. So again, it wouldn't be something that happens, regularly, but at least once during the year that we would involve the board in an all staff meeting. I think that would be great. It would be a great way for staff also to get to know the board. I'm not sure that everybody, unless they tune into the recorded version of our meetings later that are, posted for the public, that they, would even really know some of our board members if you came into the library. So that could be a nice way to really increase communication.
okay. So I'll work on adding those pieces in, and then we'll send out again, sort of a final draft for the February meeting.
Sounds great.
Maybe I'll just send you out the bullet point so you know what the changes are over what we currently have, as well as the final full draft.
Great.
So, okay, any other comments on that? If not, we're moving on to chair report, which I actually don't have anything to report. Board and commissions did not meet in December. So I don't, was there a friend to the library meeting after our last? Okay,
No, there was.
I did not see anything, so. All right, so then that leads you to manager's report.
Okay, and I kind of keep this a little bit brief. So in December, our total circulation was slightly down from November. I did go back and compare the circulation data to the last kind of normal year we had pre-pandemic. And I think this is kind of some of the interesting data. The digital circulation is up from December of 2019. That was kind of our last normal benchmark that we had to measure it against. We had a 35% increase in digital checkouts from December 2019 compared to December 2021. Where we've lost is in the print part of the circulation, which is not surprising given, particularly I think in December with some of the increase of cases of COVID nationally and also within Los Alamos. We were seeing, I think, less visitation and less circulation. So we were down about 18% for print, and a total print and digital combined, one going up, the other going down. Compared to 2019, we are showing about a 13.2% decrease in total circulation from December 2019 to this December of 2021. So that gives you a little bit of an idea, I think, comparatively where we are. We had two very successful adult programs, our library conversations this month. Both were well attended. We had Dr. Barbara Koltuska discussed her book, How My Brain Works, a guide to understanding it better and keeping it healthy, really an author event. And then also a live theater production by Robert Benjamin that was performed over Zoom, and that we had 40 people attending that online. Youth services was quite busy. We continued with movement and music. Believe it or not, we continued with it outdoors because of the large numbers that we usually get for that. As a safety precaution, we did have to cancel a number right before the holidays because of inclement weather. But we have been able to keep a lot of those programs going in spite of the winter weather. We had a Winterfest tabletop game day on December 4th that was quite popular. We had a special collaboration with JJAB that was really aimed at helping middle and high schoolers de-stress around the exam time, the end of the semester. So we had a number of activities available for them here at the library. And then take and make kind of create a craft event on December 31st. We did have to cancel our New Year's Eve celebration. We were hoping to have it as kind of an annual tradition. We've usually done it in the rotunda. We were hoping to move it outside this year, and unfortunately the weather got so severely cold that we ended up having to cancel that, but we did continue with the craft event on the 31st. So those were kind of the highlights from the month. And I think that's everything that I have to report.
Okay. Going back to my agenda. Does anybody have any questions for Eileen? All right, Councilor Rieger, anything to report from the county?
No, we don't have too much to report.
Okay.
I don't think we discussed the library during our December meeting. Yeah, most of those were canceled. So I am interested in taking any questions or any, but I think we probably went over the issues that the plan here is for next fiscal year. So you have a lot of time for input, and everybody has a lot of time to get things to John. So any questions for me?
And I'm guessing online meetings are still the requirement from county since nothing's changing on COVID numbers. Actually, they're getting worse.
Yeah, the COVID numbers are not going well. We are beginning our council meetings in person.
Okay.
But it really was a thought that the public needs how do you call it, more complete chances at input. And some people, well, that's the thought that you have both. If you have an in-person meeting, then you can do in-person or online, because we have all of the computer stuff set up. So that's what the county staff is thinking. And I don't know if there are enough resources to do that for all the boards. So most of the commissions will still be on Zoom. I don't say we'd have to do it as a requirement. If you asked for anything else, I think that would probably be possible, sure. But actually, we don't have anybody asking, as far as I know. I don't know if anybody in this group wants to have in-person meetings or not. Has anybody raised their hand? Yeah.
I mean, last conversation, I think there was no clamoring that we needed to move in that direction. And again,
and
I 92 cases over the weekend. So
Wow.
it says to me that we're staying here for a while.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know who wants to. So I think it might have been the Lodgers Tax Advisory Board. I'm also on that, and no one wanted to meet in person. So it was zero people complaining about Zoom. So I think that, and looks like the same deal as anyone. If anyone has another idea, go ahead and speak up right now. But I think I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Rieger.
Sure.
Any other informational items anybody needs to report? And I see nobody from the community. Can you confirm that for me, Eileen, that nobody's?
Yeah, let me just try and switch over screens here. I don't see anybody from the public here.
So I'm gonna pull up my calendar. So our next meeting would be February, which would be February 7th. Correct?
That is
Right,
correct.
so February 7th, 5:30, and again, we will vote to approve our fiscal 23 work plan as part of that agenda. All right, unless anybody has anything else, I will call us to adjourn at 6:33. Thank you all for your service. Thank you all for being here. Happy New Year.
Thank you all. Happy New Year.
New Year.
Thank
Happy New Year. Take care.
Bye-bye.